It is, as Alicia said, my mother would say to me, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. Don't ever carry as a personal burden your capacity to do whatever you dream and aspire to do based on other people's limited ability to see who can do what. This is part of what's involved, is that we have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open, sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that fucking door down.
We are about to have the first Black and South Asian woman president of the United States of America, because America is ready. And I'm with my dear friend, Terrell Starr of the Black Diplomats podcast and Substack. Hey.
Hey, what's going on?
And we are here to break it all down for you. Blast some fools who need blasting, obviously. Prepare us all for the battle of our lives that is up ahead. And reassure you once again, as we've been saying on Gaslit Nation all year since the very start of this election, yes, we can win. Yes, the blue wave is real. Yes, what happened in 2018 was a historic sea change in political life in America. Progressive infrastructure was quickly launched and built in a matter of months, and it's been expanding all across the union, including into states like Kansas. That is not a small thing. That is a revolution. And that revolution, it was the grassroots, not the elite ivory tower, not Morning Joe, not the Atlantic, not Nancy Pelosi. It was that grassroots blue wave that started in 2018 and has never gone away, that has shown up every single election cycle, even off year elections, that rallied as soon as President Joe Biden made the call and said, it's Kamala. Everybody showed up for her and everybody showed up for him. I want to make perfectly clear, the coalition that stood by Biden, that called for unity, that called for greater decorum instead of elderly abuse, and far-right media gaslighting, they're the ones that made what we saw happen. And before I kick it to Terrell, I just want to summarize what we've just all witnessed. Believe your eyes, believe your ears. Joe Biden did what dictators never do. He stepped down and endorsed his successor. Within 24 hours, Kamala's campaign raised $250 million, including over $100 million in grassroots donations alone, dwarfing the $50 million Trump received when he was convicted of 34 felonies. That was Republicans paying their KKK dues, obviously, when they donated to Trump. What's more, Trump and the Republican Party wasted their precious airtime at the RNC bashing Biden, including for being too old. Now Trump is the oldest party nominee in history. Trump is going to lose, and Kamala Harris is going to win. We are going to make sure of it. And guess what? She will now be immune from prosecution thanks to Trump's MAGA judges on the Supreme Court. So as president, Kamala can pass all the executive orders she wants. They can't stop her. We now know why God spared Trump's life, so he can lose to a Black woman. How are you feeling, Terrell?
It would be so funny for him to lose to a Black woman. That would be the hilarity of her whole 4 years. And she runs again beyond that. I knew that people were rally around Kamala, but I had no idea that the excitement would be this intense. And I think part of why you see this galvanization of support, it was just the gall of this notion that people would just bypass her, right? And I think particularly the Black political class looked at this and said, this ain't go, right? And so you saw immediately all these major governors and people who were potential candidates to challenge Kamala at the convention. They all got behind her and supported her. And so she is the nominee. Let's make one thing clear. She's not going to have any troubling pathway to the nomination. Everyone's going to come. Eventually, Newsom is going to come around. Everybody's going to come around and support her. But I think that it wasn't that people could not accept Joe Biden stepping down. It was the fact that people insisted on stepping over Kamala. That was the issue. Had this been the structure, or had this been the process,
exactly right,
Biden steps down, Kamala steps up, we wouldn't have all this drama. We wouldn't have all of this drama, right? And so I actually believe that she does have a greater chance with Biden, because with certain demographics with the Latinx community and younger voters, she does better. And so I don't accept this notion that a Black woman can't win or Asian American woman can't win. I don't believe that at all. I think that these are just traditional hangups that people have about race and about women in general that I think that we have moved beyond. Now, of course, we'll see during the election, but everything about her reads she's going to kick Trump's butt, right? And I think that there is an optimism about her really being a lawyer, somebody who has been practicing law up until 2016, right? And so, Biden is also a lawyer, but he pretty much was on the Judiciary Committee. He wasn't practicing in the way that Kamala was practicing. And so when you think about women's rights, that was one of her number one domestic issue that she championed, right? With infant-child mortality rate.
As senator, she had a lawyer specialized in reproductive health care and abortion rights on her staff in the Senate. She was the only one to have that.
Right. And so she is the perfect person to push back against Trump's talking points. And so it will be interesting to see who our VP would be. I'm thinking that it would be either somebody like Mark Kelly or Bashir.
But let's keep in mind about Mark Kelly. I love Mark Kelly. I love Gabby Giffords. I love them dearly. But do we have to go through all this, what we just went through with Biden? So let's say like in 2032, when is Mark Kelly's turn to run as VP? You know what I'm saying? Like, how old is Mark Kelly going to be in 2032 to serve out 8 full years?
Well, you know what, though? Is that he doesn't have to run. That's another way to look at it, right? And there are plenty of people who are VPs who don't run. So I think people look at the VP as a coordination step to the presidency, a lot of that for hubris and political arrogance, but the man does not have to run. I actually like Bashir out of Kentucky.
I love Bashir. He's a lawyer. He's somebody that in his state took on giant corporations. He went to the Supreme Court in his state, and he defended trans rights in a deep red state. And he spoke out so beautifully. And I want to play a quick clip of that now.
Your race was also interesting in a lot of ways, but one of the issues that came up was, of course, trans rights. I mean, you did not hesitate to veto a sweeping anti-trans bill passed by the Kentucky state legislature.
Well, all children are children of God. That's what my faith teaches me, and I was going to stand up especially for the most marginalized children that didn't deserve either a state legislature or an entire campaign and all these super PACs picking on them.
And then I want to just point out, because I'm very amped up for this podcast. I barely slept last night. I was so excited. I just want to make clear, because I have a million questions for you on all of this. I want to make clear, already the press is being contrarian, and they're trying to come after our joy. But the reality is that this was not a coronation of Kamala Harris. This was not a 4D chess move by the Democratic Party. Believe your eyes, believe your ears, that the Democratic Party establishment was calling for an open convention. They were not convinced of Kamala Harris. AOC warned us in the Instagram Live. She rang the alarm. And it was all of us, these past emotional roller coaster weeks, being glued to the news, being glued to social media to see what the Team Biden folks are saying, from Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter, Stacey Abrams. Everyone was like, it's Biden. If not Biden, it's Kamala. Let's be very clear. The establishment wanted an open primary. And on top of that, this was not the success of the bullying of so many in the media, in the podcast world. They're even like going after AOC, saying, you've egg on your face, AOC. Shame on you. You were wrong for not calling for Biden to drop out. AOC did the correct thing. She's young. She's progressive. She's energizing. She has a big old Gen Z base that is...
And she's practical.
Yeah, her whole base of supporters are entering the voting force for the first time. AOC demonstrated party unity. AOC, by talking directly to us through social media, was showing that government does work, that it does matter, that we need to get involved in the system in order to change the system, to better the system. She was out there telling us she's giving generators and solar power to Puerto Rico through the Biden administration. At a time of such deep cynicism and apathy in America, AOC is saying, roll up your sleeves and join me, get involved. That's the only way out, because that's true. That is absolutely what it comes down to. We are not going to be like the useless Russian opposition and stab ourselves in the chest with our apathy and destroy our country through our apathy. We're not going to let that happen. So AOC shows a lot of conviction, a lot of humility, and a lot of pragmatism. And by demonstrating that unity to her crowd, she not only stood by Biden, showing a lot of decency as a person, but also she warned us they're coming after Kamala. They're going to sidestep Kamala. Don't let that happen. And we didn't. So again, all of that miracle, that magic that we've been feeling, that we haven't felt in so long, hold on to that right now, because you're going to need it, because it's from the grassroots. It's bottom up. And they're going to try over these coming months to chip away at her, because there's a lot of unconscious bias, misogyny, racism. Women, especially non-white women, get morbidly scrutinized. Meanwhile, you've mediocre white men failing up, becoming billionaires. They're Silicon Valley kingmakers, right? So we have to understand that the same power that ensured that Kamala would be our nominee, that grassroots power, that is what's going to get her over the finish line. Hold on to that.
She just has the energy to push all these points home. And I think that she will be able to function and not only continue Joe Biden's policy, she has her own. Our current VP, Harris, even when she was running from the state attorney general's office and going into the Senate. And one of the things that I've noticed about her is that she is brilliant with conveying how the legal process ought to work to general audiences, right? And so she first came of age, or well, in national prominence during the whole Russiagate situation and the Comey hearings, where she was really digging into Russian collusion with the Trump administration. And I believe that she would be a lot more efficient and aggressive with going against large corporations, challenging kleptocracy in ways that Joe Biden not only hasn't, but actually doesn't have the skill to. I think that she's more skilled than him. And it's unfortunate that she was not utilized during these 3.5 years in a way that demonstrates that more clearly to the American public. But she has the next 3 months to do so. But she has the energy to really display that, just based on the fact that we know she won't fall half asleep during a debate. You know, my apologies to Biden, right? And so I definitely have no problem with Biden stepping down simply because Kamala stepped up. But people didn't want her to step up. They wanted to step over her, right? And so now you're going to see this really energized base just in a matter of 24 hours. You brought up a number, $250 million. It's an astronomically high number, right? There were 45,000 Black women on a Zoom call. There were so many callers that they had to call the CEO of Zoom to increase the number of people that could be on a call. And so that type of energy would not have happened had we gone through this drama of an open convention. And so now I have real hope. I have more hope simply because of this enthusiasm now than I did even if Biden had stayed on. I think that the chances of people coming out are even greater. But again, it's because of her. And I think people misunderstood us when we were advocating for Joe Biden. And even AOC, and I think you mentioned it in your tweet, it wasn't that AOC was just all 100% defending Joe Biden. She was really talking about paving the way for Kamala Harris. But people didn't get that. But now you have a base where there's no limit, right? Kamala opens up more possibilities of people that will come to the polls in ways that Joe Biden couldn't. And I still felt like if he were on the ticket, he would have a fighting chance. But now we have a real chance because the ceiling, it just got higher. Whereas with Trump, his is like right here. His is kind of like he's reached it. And now with more than, like, as you said, $250 million.
Never been done before on this level.
Plus the organization. Trump's campaign was configured to square off with Biden, right? And so they had their whole game plan set up for him. Now they're going to be set up with somebody who's pretty much going to prosecute him on stage. And I'm at the point where I even wonder if he's even going to have a debate with her.
No, because she is a joyful woman who laughs easily and has a wonderful, infectious laugh. And as you and I know from covering dictators for years now, dictators don't have a sense of humor. That's why they're dictators. They're just
Right.
like the meanest, most miserable human beings that are just like, so materialistic and lack soul. And so that's why you've never seen Trump laugh. Trump lives on TV. We've seen him countless hours now on TV. When have you ever seen him laugh? Like really genuinely laugh? Never. When have you seen Putin laugh? Never. That's classic for dictators.
It is. And I think that everybody is worried. You already see the Russian propaganda.
Their only shot of winning is Russia now. That's their only shot at this, is Russia hijacking the election like they did in 2016.
Because another thing, too, we talked about how Gaza would be Biden's undoing. If you look back at VP Harris's speech in Selma about Gaza, and I think that she could be moved in ways that Biden could not. And listen, we could go back to our AIPAC history, the whole 9 yards. We all know that. But I don't think that she is as devout to Israel as Biden is. And this is another important thing that people have not really thought about either. The post-Ferguson culture has shaped her in a way that it can never shape Biden. I think that, and when she ran in 2020, even when she was running for Senate in 2016, she was kind of dragged through the codes about the policing record, et cetera, right? And so I think that those moments sat with her. And so she is somebody who could be moved by the grassroots activist movement in ways that Biden could not. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how she responds to this on the campaign trail, because I know that she knows that the Arab American vote is vital in Michigan, it's vital in Arizona, it's vital in Georgia. She knows that. I'm not expecting her just to go the polar opposite, but do I think that she's going to strike a chord in a way that Biden has not? Yes. And we know that last time we checked, the reporting that I saw is that she's not going to be in attendance when Benjamin Netanyahu speaks to Congress. First of all, no one should be in attendance when Benjamin Netanyahu speaks to Congress. He needs to be in a room by himself or not invited at all or disinvited.
Unless they're coming from The Hague to arrest him for war crimes.
Correct. Okay. And so I think that the fact that she has not committed to being there is a very important signal.
I read that she also had a pre-planned campaign stop, but I'm sure that was also conveniently.
Listen, if it was somebody else, it's perfectly convenient, but I also think it's, it could also be strategic. You could sell that in a wide range of ways, but the bottom line is that she won't be there, which is important. And so regardless of whether it was planned or not, she can always say, well, I wasn't there. And that gives off a political signal in itself. And so I think that she has the emotional intelligence. Because again, I think the thing we need to start doing is talking about how different they are, because they are two different people. I think that she has more emotional intelligence than he does. I say this because I've interviewed her a number of times, right? And I've sat down with her, not just for 15 minutes, I sat down with her for like an hour and more. And because some of the conversations I had with her were like off air, I can't say, but she's more self-reflective about social justice. She's more reflective about these things in Gaza that many people don't want to acknowledge, but simply because they haven't seen. And now that she's no longer kind of being put to the backside, and then she can show who she really is, and she has the full support of all these grassroots organizations and all the Black Women Coalition. I have never seen them this excited. This excitement is much more intense than that of Obama. And here's the biggest irony. When she ran in 2020, this wasn't there. And as I told you before, and I'm happy that we could say this on Gaslit and my podcast, because like this type of thought isn't really valued. Black Americans who pretty much determine who the candidate is going to be said, hey, Kamala, you ain't ready yet, but in a few years, keep doing it. And so now she's in this VP spot. And so the way that people look at her is different now. And that comes by respecting the ways in which Black Americans view your viability and your candidacy. And Obama didn't go through that because, again, he was a different person and he was a different type of candidate. It was a different time. And so the difference now is that she went through all of these steps. And the main thing that broke the camel's back about the enthusiasm was the fact that you dared to step over her. So you were talking about this whole thing of mediocre white men. Compared to Kamala, all these other people would be mediocre, precisely because she went through these steps that her base required of her. And that base was not going to support anybody else. And the most important takeaway from this is that it shows that the base is stronger than this oligarchic political culture.
1,000,000,000%. So I want to just point out that already the media, and this includes many women. I just read an article by an old friend of mine, Kelly Goff, in the Daily Beast, saying that Kamala isn't electable and that we're all in a cult, like we were with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, where people rallied around her from trying to prevent her from stepping down. And that landed us with RBG being replaced by a MAGA loyalist on the Supreme Court. And shame on us. And obviously, Ruth should have stepped down earlier under Obama when we had a chance to get a replacement there. The court would be very different if that had happened. But that's not what's happening with Kamala. We're not in a damn cult here. She's been vice president of the United States. She had 4 years of scrutiny in that job. She's come a long way. She was on the front lines of standing up to Putin in our support for Ukraine. She spoke at a lot of major conferences on behalf of the US and leading the global alliance against Russia's fascism. And unfortunately, you have the women in the media saying that, well, she's not tested. America's not ready. She needs to step down. We need somebody that can win, or else we're going to be stuck with Trump. So already there's the backlash against the joy. There's the contrarianism coming in. And I think it's important that we all stay grounded in what I've been saying for years on this show, which is grassroots power is the most reliable power we have left. Getting out the vote matters. Talking to the people in your life, making sure they have a plan to vote matters. Showing up at our phone banks to get out the vote matters. And that's how we're going to win. And the same sort of coalition of folks that were pushing Biden out, really going after Biden without any sort of clear succession plan, because Biden wasn't going to step down without a plan. And then Kamala became the plan and everything's a go now. So I just want to remind folks that to stay grounded in what matters, and what matters is that the blue wave is real. As I said in my emergency podcast on Sunday, when Biden stepped down, I said, trust the blue wave. Whatever happens, the blue wave is real. That's where we are. So what are your thoughts on all that, Terrell?
I read that article, and in a sense, I can kind of understand where she's coming from. It's about Kelly Goff, right? For the simple fact that it's the same way that people felt about Stacey Abrams, a wide range of other people, right? There is apathy that has just turned into cynicism. And so sometimes when you look at these pieces, you have to look at them as simply people just venting. And I don't mean to undermine the intellectual integrity of what Kelly says or anyone else who feels like her says.
Kelly is a prominent Black commentator, an artist, playwright, TV writer, filmmaker.
And she could be all of those things along with everyone else who can also argue that they're prominent and that they have whatever position that they have. But ultimately, we're human beings, and some of us, like in her case, rightfully understand the history of this country and the trajectory of it and express very real fears and concerns about political vitality. And so it's not that the spirit of what she says isn't real, isn't genuine, or as she looks at it, even actionable based on how she gauges the climate of this country. The problem is that what the fuck does that serve us?
Exactly
you get what I'm
right.
saying?
Like what are we gonna do? Like, pump the brakes. Let's all start over again. Have that open convention. I love you, Kel. I love you. I know her. I've known Kelly for many years. I've gone on trips with her. She's a wonderful human being. And I love you, Kel, but you're wrong.
That's all I'm saying. Like, what the fuck? Like, if you want to just kind of air out the feelings and everything, that's fine. And so, as far as a cult goes, I don't think it's a cult based on the simple fact that most people did not look at Kamala as their first choice when she ran in 2020, right? So I don't see it like that at all. I think that I think that the frustration that she might have deals with this process that we've all accepted, right? Like if you believe in the altruistic approach of open elections and et cetera, then that's a different conversation to have. The question is, on a practical basis, is that going to get us the difference between a Kamala versus a Trump? And it's a lot more binary than the example of the Supreme Court example that she brought up. It's far more binary, and the timing is far more consequential. So I just think she's wrong, but I just wanted to honor her feelings on that. And then finally, when you talk about how existential this is, I think from a practical level, people feel like their day-to-day civil liberties in the way that, when you think about J.D. Vance, who feel like people's bodies, literally, they need to be regulated, right? In their menstrual cycles, all this other crap about how women are supposed to produce babies for the rest of the country, like all this shit. This is existential. I think the vast majority of people feel like we don't have the time to go through this altruistic, contrarian mindset of, for the purity of politics, let's just go through and see this all through. And everyone has, hey, you get to talk and you get to talk. People have already made up their minds. And so my question is, this is not a cult. My question is, have you read The Fucking Room?
Exactly right. And that goes to everybody out there spreading bullshit right now.
Yeah, right. You haven't read The Room, right? And so when I'm traveling across Europe, and even as an American, if I'm in Germany, if I'm in Denmark or whatever, the fact that if my leg falls off, I don't have to worry about insurance at the risk, and so that I could actually go to a doctor and not have to pay an arm and a leg, literally, and not die from my injuries, right? Just these like Europeans, it's not unusual for them to have these type of snap elections, and they're going through the ebbs and flows of process, right? Because for better or for worse, many Europeans have their basic needs taken care of. We don't have that type of infrastructure here in the United States. Do you understand the distinctions I'm making here? Like basically here, we're still trying to build an infrastructure where our basic needs and our basic humanity is going to be honored. And we don't have time to be pure and say, hey guys, even if Kamala eventually wins, let her go through this process whereby I'll feel really better if we go through the process at the convention and everyone picks Kamala then. No, why the fuck do we need it then if everybody's fucking choosing her now? Did you listen to the 40,000 Black women who raised $1 million just in 1 hour on the phone?
45,000 Black women. And Kelly Goff's article puts the number at 34,000. So she's skipping over 10,000 Black women that made time for that call and put in money to raise well over $1 million in a few short hours.
I genuinely believe that a lot of these people are being contrarian and they're wrong. We don't have time for this. And if there wasn't, and here's the biggest irony of it, right? You're talking about process. The reason why Kamala is the top candidate is that people were standing up and complaining about process. So we went through a process. The cult mentality wasn't with these people who overwhelmingly support Kamala. It was the people who decided they were just going to step over her. That was the oligarchic mindset. Like, so when you're talking about a lack of process, that was it, not what's happening right now. So this isn't a coronation. This is affirmation of what people want. We cannot point to a moment in American history where a particular political class has stood up this much. And if you don't think that those 45,000 or so Black women that were on that phone don't represent their constituencies, you don't know shit about politics.
This is unprecedented, what is happening. And there is no way that Trump can surmount this unless the Kremlin comes in and physically invades the United States of America. All right. Like the cyber warfare hacking will not cut it at this point. Like they're going to have to full on send their green little men starting at Brighton Beach.
But you know what I'm also concerned about, though, on that note, is that I'm telling you, mark my words on this. She's going to be far more aggressive against the Kremlin than Biden will ever be. It's not going to even compare. And it doesn't even have anything to do with military, even though I think she's going to maintain that. I'm thinking about sanctions. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about prosecutions.
War crimes.
All of those things. So I think that she's going to be far more aggressive and use the international legal systems in ways that Biden was unwilling to do. And so all this backstepping that Biden is doing, I don't think she's going to do it because she became a national name based on investigating the Kremlin's collusion in the election. So I'm concerned about the attempts to undermine her. And it's going to be much more because I think the Kremlin would have been they would have been cool with Biden, not cool with them. But I think that Kamala terrifies them.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to just get to a listener question. Amy writes, what is Terrell hearing from the Black community?
So that's a general question so broadly. As far as VP Harris's candidacy, I think that overall people are genuinely excited because she gives activists a reason to rally around. Unfortunately, what you do here, you have some Black male misogyny that's going on about her in regards to, hey, she locks up Black men, which is bullshit. I've been critical of her criminal justice record when I was covering her campaign in 2020, but not for the misogynistic reasons that some of these men who are very Trumpian in their thinking are talking about, right? But overall, there's definitely an excitement about the first Black woman who could potentially be the president. And so she has the sorority community around her. So every type of politically active organization that deals with electoral politics is energized in ways that what we saw with Obama. I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that people were just going to step over her. That fact has as much to do with Black people's excitement for her as it does with her viability as a candidate.
I want to point out that Black Men for Kamala had a Zoom call.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to bring it. Yeah.
Well over 20,000 people that raised well over $1 million in a few short hours. So Black men are getting information too for Kamala.
Yeah, I had it on my notes. I was going to bring it. Yeah, but she, so Roland Martin Unfiltered led that with Bakari Sellers and other group of men, of other Black men. And so the vast majority of them are standing with her. And so, but the reason why I brought up the misogynistic Black men was because there's a disinformation campaign that I think that the Kremlin will use to undermine her candidacy. So I brought it up as something to look out for, not as a representative view of how most Black men see her, because the vast majority are going to be as supportive as those 45,000 Black women that were on the call. In fact, I think that, when we look at Roland Martin Unfiltered, the 20,000+ Black men that came on, you're going to see more enthusiasm from Black men for a political candidate than we've ever seen, because they're challenging everyone in the community to step up. It's kind of like we have all this experience of all the things that could undermine our candidacy and our vitality, and we have all of the alerts up, right? And so we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 months some of the robust organizing that we have ever seen. And this type of excitement never would have happened with Joe Biden on the ticket. We would have seen it, but not nearly this intense, because we have new possibilities. Based on the simple fact that you're going to have a young, vibrant person that's going to be delivering these talking points in a much more efficient ways than Biden could never do. So I'm actually excited that Biden stepped down, but the operative words, so that VP Harris could step up. We can't underestimate this. had this conversation around Biden stepping down been followed with Kamala stepping up, we would have been saving ourselves 2 to 3 weeks of Parkgate. And I know I keep bringing it up, but I think it's so important.
Yes. And I want to emphasize that for everybody, because there are some people gloating right now who have no right to gloat because they were not full-throated for Kamala ever.
Right.
Okay. And so, yes, Biden stepping down was ultimately the right thing to do. Terrell and I did not call for that because we take our leadership from the Black women who are the backbone of making America more democratic over the centuries of this land's recent history. And so Black women were like, it's Biden, we're sticking by Biden, and if it's not Biden, it's Kamala. And that is exactly what we repeated here on the show because we trust the non-white women who literally have been on the front lines of confronting authoritarianism throughout America's history since the founding.
Absolutely.
And that is because this is existential for them. And that was the right thing to do. And a lot of the bullshit that went down against Biden could have been done privately, could have been done strategically. And what the big puzzle piece that was missing was it's Kamala. The plan is Kamala. You guys went after Biden without a clear plan. What do you expect you're going to get? Okay, that was your number one mistake. And I want to underline that because too many people are like taking victory laps that should not be taking victory laps right now. So the other thing I want to point out is the culture is rising up in such a meaningful way. One of the most significant moments in hip hop happened this year. And that, of course, was the big battle between Kendrick Lamar of Oakland, California. Oakland is, of course, Kamala's hometown. And so Kendrick versus Drake, and Kendrick just destroyed Drake. If you were not following this, there's so many videos that will explain it to you. I was watching their responses to each other come out in real time. I was losing sleep trying to follow it all. But let me just sum it up for you this way. Pulitzer Prize winner Kendrick Lamar called out Drake for being creepy with young girls. He went there. And that song was not only straight to the throat, jugular, just beheaded Drake in front of the eyes of the world, but it was also an amazing song that you can dance to, clean your house to, get ready to go out to. And that was what made it so culturally significant and devastating. And so now the culture is taking that song and mashing it up with images of Oakland-raised Kamala dancing to it and Trump being the pedophile that's called out in that song. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you just need to go to the show notes for this episode and I will link to some examples of what the kids are making and putting out there because this is a really big deal. So what I'm saying is that one of the biggest moments in hip hop is being used right now to promote the hell out of Kamala. So yes, Gen Z is going to show up in record numbers on November 5th, 2024 to make sure she gets elected. They are being ignited unlike ever before. TikTok has exploded with all of these fandom videos of Kamala just laughing, coconutting, praising the coconut tree, all that stuff. One young woman even made a video of the coconut being dressed as a coconut tree, saying, the coconut tree breaks their silence and finally talks to the media. And she did a whole coconut tree press conference. So this is an organic firestorm of pop culture promoting Kamala Harris to young people across this country who increasingly get their news from TikTok and Instagram. And Trump cannot compete with that because Trump looks increasingly unhinged, especially when you have fake wannabe carpetbagger, hillbilly, J.D. Vance, who is a laboratory invention of Silicon Valley techno-fascists, going on TV and demonizing women who do not have naturally born children. Do you know how self-sabotaging that is to do? There are women out there who simply cannot physically have children. Do you know how much that imagine a woman who wants to have a child, who went through so many miscarriages, who went through IVF and it still didn't work, and is heartbroken that she physically cannot have children of her own. And she's watching Fox News and J.D. Vance is blasting her for physically not being able to have children because that's what he just did to Kamala.
The thing about these type of people is that they're so vile that there's no reasoning with them. The only thing you have to do is just organize to get them out. The way that my mind's work, I try to make sense of things, and you can't make sense of that. So the only thing that we need to do is to get rid of these people and to make sure that they're as far away from power as they can, because the goal is to defeat Trump so that Trump will not win. So Vance will be in the Senate and get him out of the Senate. Another thing that we have to think about is not 2024, but we need to set up the stage for 2026, because there needs to be a House and a Senate for Kamala to operate with. The House is still controlled by these MAGA conservative Republicans. And so we need to encourage our people to not only be mindful of the presidential race, but the U.S. House and Senate races and local races. What the Republicans have done, because their 2025 plan, Project 2025, doesn't just focus at the national level, it focuses at the local, focuses on the state. Even though 2025 is focused on, it's a department by department chapter plan. They are focusing on structure. And Kamala being in office for the next 4 years, she will have some say in judges that are appointed to the federal bench at various. And so we need to start thinking about structure as well. And there's no one that's more qualified to lead that way than VP Harris, or based on the simple fact that her style of prosecuting has been one where she's very methodical, right? If you look at her hearings and when she's had her time to speak, it's less emotional, right? I think that she is effective from a process standpoint as AOC is with her question. AOC she's great at hearing. If you see her talk, right? She doesn't do this whole thing where she lectures people. She gets straight to the point and she really gets to the heart of the issue. Kamala, because she's an attorney and she's a practicing attorney. She was a practicing attorney up until she was elected into the U.S. Senate. She knows how to do that from a legal process. And so I just think that she is I've always felt this way. She's an infinitely more talented politician than Joe Biden is. And this is no disrespect to Joe Biden. It just pays tribute to the talents and skills of VP Kamala Harris.
And I want to just pay tribute to Joe Biden, because a lot of people are saying, like, why didn't he drop out sooner? And it's like, he's been fighting so many wars on so many fronts, obviously. Like, he's had a really intense administration and still managed to get so much done. And in tribute to Joe Biden, and I know he's not perfect, and I know in some ways he's going to be remembered as a Churchill. Churchill inherited a mess, and Churchill had to rally the people and work really hard to get Britain ready to stand up to fascism and win. And on top of that, Churchill also allowed a famine of millions of people in Bengal to go on, a man-made famine where millions died. And that's also part of Churchill's legacy. And I think Biden will have that legacy as well. He rallied the world to stand up to fascism, but he also enabled the genocide of Gaza, where countless brown people have been slaughtered, including, countless children and women have been slaughtered before the eyes of the world. So that will be his legacy. It's going to be complicated like Churchill. He did do a lot of extraordinary things for civil rights in the United States. I want to read Ashton Pittman of the Mississippi Free Press wrote on Twitter, flashback 2012, when the Obama campaign wasn't ready to endorse marriage equality. When asked about it, Joe Biden broke with the campaign's messaging and endorsed it. An avalanche of Democrats, including President Obama, soon followed him. And now I'm going to play that clip.
I'm curious, the president has said that his views on gay marriage, on same-sex marriage, have evolved, but he's opposed to it. You're opposed to it. Have your views evolved?
Look, I just think that the good news is that as more and more Americans come to understand what this is all about is a simple proposition. Who do you love? Who do you love? And will you be loyal to the person you love? And that's what people are finding out is what all marriages at their root are about. Whether they're marriages of lesbians or gay men or heterosexuals.
Is that what you believe now?
That's what I believe.
And you're comfortable with same-sex marriage now?
Look, I am Vice President of the United States of America. The President sets the policy. I am absolutely comfortable with the fact that men marrying men, women marrying women, and heterosexual men and women marrying women are entitled to the same exact rights, all the civil rights, all the civil liberties. And quite frankly, I don't see much of a distinction beyond that.
And now here is a Biden supporter. This is a TikTok video that's gone viral. A woman who compares Biden as having all of these qualities of recent presidents.
Well, I don't know if I could say this without crying. It's okay, just take a minute. I love Joe Biden. I think he's the best president we've ever had. He's got all the qualities necessary. Of all the presidents combined, he's got Franklin Delano Roosevelt's ability to pass legislation to help all of us, middle class, poor people, middle class. He's got Jimmy Carter's humility and his caring about people and his honesty. He's got JFK's capability of being able to smile and laugh things off and just fluff everybody off. And he's got Harry Truman's determination and his way to just say the truth and speak it whether you like it or not. He's a cross between all four of them. Mm-hmm. He's got all their qualities combined in one. And I think he's probably the best president ever. I don't know what we're going to do without him. I really love that man, and I think Americans really love him because he has all these qualities. He's done so much in such a short time. If he had had one more term. But look what he's accomplished. Look what he's accomplished. We'll never have another one like him. I can't talk anymore.
What are your thoughts on what Biden's legacy is going to be?
I think that Joe Biden's legacy is not going to be appreciated now as much as it will be 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now. Because, you know, the thing about being an operator in the way that Joe Biden has, in addition to how poorly he messaged all of his accomplishments, when people look at their healthcare, when they look at their tax returns years down the line, and think about the ways in which he started the process of going after wealthy businesses that don't pay their fair share in taxes. People are going to appreciate that, not now, because we're in all this political mess right now, but they'll see it later. So I think that's the best way to kind of cap off Biden. And we also have to thank him for being the person, even at his age, even when he was not as spry as he used to be, right? As the person who decided to step out, I'll always respect him for going through this as he was dealing with the death of his son, as he was dealing with the up and down travails of his, with Bo, the person who died, right? And then the challenging ways in which his other son was going through alcoholism. That's Hunter Biden, right?
The addiction struggle that Hunter Biden had while being witch hunted.
Right? Operative word.
Rupert's far-right empire and Trump. And the Russians as well.
Absolutely correct, right? And so the grace with which he handled that is something that every politician should model. He also made fighting for democracy playing for the American citizenry, and he put us in a prime position and VP Harris in a prime position to take that to the next level. I don't think that any of the candidates who are running in 2020 would have done remotely as good a job, even though we both talked about that he was not our first choice. In many cases, our second choice, but that's okay. He actually performed beyond many of our expectations. And I think that's something we need. So I didn't think that his performance would be as good as it was.
Exactly right. And I've heard that from so many labor experts, the most pro-labor president since FDR. And he was close with Bernie.
Yeah.
And Kamala Harris, most progressive voting record in Congress, he chose her as his running mate. And I just think back to that emotional moment on the stage in the 2020 primary where Kamala looked at him and said, "You are against busing. I am a product of busing." That moment and the way he looks at her with like such empathy in his eyes. And it's just incredible. Like, he was a man that we need more of in Washington in the sense that, yeah, he was the status quo. He was the stubborn status quo when it came to Israel and maintaining U.S. policy on Israel, like turning a blind eye to the genocide of Palestinians for so long. That is obviously on his record. But he also came a long way on helping further civil rights in this country, including helping the first Black man become president and now helping the first Black woman become president.
He absolutely did. And I think that we always need to think that in reality, even though Joe Biden is not considered a progressive, his policies have been the most progressive, like you said, amongst the most progressive ever, because he doesn't come off as a progressive. We know, again, on Gaza, he certainly wasn't, but domestically, his record you measure against any other president and it's better. So with the election of Harris, we'll begin to see the fruits of his labor. So anything that she does, that she presses forward, is going to be in large part because he paved the way and made it easier for her. And so even with Obama, who I think Joe Biden was a bit more effective in many ways than he was, Obama made it easier for Biden. And then Biden is going to make it easier for VP Harris. And I think that VP Harris, I really think that she has the intellectual capacity and the political acumen and the social capital to even double what Biden has done, simply because she has the energy to do it. And so I'm really happy. Neither of us was calling for Biden to step down, but we explained why that was. But we all can agree that we're both are happy that he stepped down because she is the better candidate. And so I'm just thinking about all these, and I think that because she was picked to be his VP, I think that alone also, it speaks to his respect for who he knew his base was. That's the main thing. And I'll close out with that. Because he knew his base, he picked her. And so strategically, he thought about this country, not only by stepping down, but by selecting her so that she could eventually step up.
He did not take the bait on that open primary bullshit. He said it's Kamala, and everyone said, yes, it is. It was the grassroots that rose up. It was the coalition standing by Joe Biden that rose up. And yes, a lot of people were being very vocal, calling for him to step down, also calling for Kamala. I recognize you, I see you. But it was the heart and soul of his base. It was the Black women. It was the Black Voters Matter juggernaut that's going to win this election with all of us linked arms doing it together that made this happen. It was not top down, it was bottom up. And I want to share something very odd that happened to me on Friday. All last week, because of the intensity of these last couple weeks, I was trying really hard to get a girls' night out. I called 5 different girlfriends. You were in DC. I was going to call you first, obviously, but you were away. And so I finally got 2 friends to confirm a night out on Friday. Last minute, they canceled on me. So I resorted to a date night with my wonderful husband, and we ended up going to some random restaurant. And at the table next to me, it's New York, so the tables are close together. This woman next to me at the table was telling her date all about, off the record, on background, juicy terms. And so I'm like listening, and I'm like, ooh, on the record, off background, off the record. What are you guys talking about? And it was very clear from the conversation. And again, this is New York City. And again, I'm a journalist, and journalists do this. I was, just kind of casually listening. And she was talking about this guy, Reed, organizing a call, and how she kept telling Teddy, it's Reed's call, not Kamala's call. And in 2 seconds, I Googled what she was talking about, and I found a New York Times story that had just come up by this guy named Theodore. That was, I forget his last, Schlesinger or whatever, in the New York Times, running a story about how the Silicon Valley investor named Reed, I forget his last name, some mega donor, organized a call of donors. And Kamala just made a quick appearance. And so I was able to confirm, I was able to find the story this person was talking about that obviously she had been a source for. And it was very clear from that, from the conversation, She was explaining to her date that Biden was still in the race. Nothing had changed. Nothing had changed. So I really do believe that nothing was going to change until this weekend when Biden's at home with COVID. And I believe the reporting that Nancy Pelosi said to him, we can do this the hard way or we can do this the easy way. And I think he finally thought, Kamala can do this. Kamala can do this. And he chose Kamala. And that's not to give Nancy Pelosi credit for this moment, because Nancy Pelosi wasn't endorsing Kamala throughout this. Nancy Pelosi could have organized the caucus around Kamala earlier. She could have set up a plan, but she didn't. And instead, I want to remind everyone, it was the administration, it was Team Biden and his coalition of people standing by him that made this possible. And they deserve credit for that. And unity is how we're going to win. Solidarity is how we're going to win. And on that note, here's a clip of Nazi Stephen Miller losing his shit over a Black woman about to become president of the United States.
They held a primary. They had ballots. They filled out circles. They went to the voting booth. They spent money on advertisements. And as President Trump said, the Republican Party spent tens of millions of dollars running against Joe Biden. Now they just woke up one morning and said, never mind, we're canceling the entire primary. We're getting rid of our candidate, and we're pretending the election has never even happened, and we're going to let donors handpick a new nominee.
America is ready for the first Black woman president. As some longtime Gaslit Nation listeners may remember, I endorsed Kamala Harris for president in January 2019. Here's a clip.
Kamala Harris has even more experience right now than Obama had when he ran for office. So I think she's inspiring and tough, and I would love to see her as president of the United States.
Kamala Harris will win. The big blue wave we started together in 2018 is building. Bye-bye, Merrick Garland. President Kamala Harris needs a Congress she can work with that won't hold up her cabinet appointments and judges. Every Thursday through Election Day and on Election Eve in November, we're calling voters in Republican hostage states in the Midwest with Indivisible to ensure a Democratic Senate. So sign up in the show notes for this episode to join us. And every Wednesday through October, we're phone banking with Sister District, calling voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. Sign up with the link in the show notes for this episode. See you there. Do everything you can now to elect science-driven, empathetic people up and down the ballot. Make sure 10 of your friends and family all have a plan to vote by going to vote.gov. That's vote.gov to confirm today that you're all registered. Don't wait, do it today in case you or someone you know isn't. Celebrate our sacred right to vote, a right which Ukrainians are currently giving their lives for in their resistance against Putin's dictatorship. Who do you plan to take with you to cast your ballot for the first woman president? I'm taking my whole family. To Trump and Putin-proof our democracy, we must hack away at corruption at the root by building our power at the all-important state level, where crucial quality of life issues from voting rights to environmental protections to LGBTQ+ rights and more are decided. Karl Rove ran this same strategy for the GOP during the Obama years, laying the groundwork for Trump to come to power in 2016 with the Kremlin's help. Now we're reversing this dangerous trend, securing key victories in swing states to protect our elections and advance progressive laws in states like Michigan. Another world is possible when we unite and build together. Here's how. Join me at State Fair, a giving circle that collects small donations among friends and family to build big power in key state races. If 1,000 Gaslit Nation listeners set up a $5 recurring monthly donation, that's $5,000 we're sending to turn so-called red states purple and so-called purple states blue. This is how we do the work. We chip away, be like water, my friend, erode their fascism. Some of the races we've supported won by only a few votes. Your $5 monthly donation will make a huge difference. Join me and my friends at State Fair today. Are there any young people in your life, Gen Z or younger? Give them the gift of the excellent book, Run for Something, a real talk guide to fixing the system yourself. It helps people of all ages run for office. So if you're thinking of running for office, be sure to read this inspiring and practical guide. Both the book and the organization Run for Something encourage, recruit, and train young people to run for office and flex their power. Inspire a young person and anyone you love and trust to run for office today. Help the Helpers. State Bridges is a sister district action network program in which volunteers from across the country fundraise for organizations doing year-round power building in key battleground states like Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. State Bridges supports organizations engaging communities underrepresented at the polls, like mothers of color, rural workers, and Latinx voters. Write letters to voters in swing districts with Vote Forward. Check out any of their easy letter writing campaigns and write letters as you listen to Gaslit Nation. We'll be keeping you company. Most importantly, don't forget, this is so important, you and 10 people you love, all of you together, check your voter registration at vote.gov. I will repeat that once again because we need to carry each other across the finish line this election day, November 5th, 2024. We are going to win. And if you want the details of everything I just read off, go to gaslitnationpod.com, and you will find our 2024 survival guide right on the homepage. It's not just a survival guide, it's a thrival. We're thriving together in the face of fascism. We're pushing it back with the blue wave. Our discussion continues, and you can get access to that by signing up at the Truth Teller level and higher on Patreon at patreon.com/gaslit. It's Pride Month. On behalf of everyone here at Gaslit Nation, we extend a happy Pride to all of our listeners in the LGBTQ+ community. You and your loved ones are not alone in this time of genocidal hate. The Gaslit Nation community has your back, and wherever you are listening, we love you. You're perfect. We're going to get through these dark times together. To help us do that, let's all come together and support these worthy organizations doing extremely important work for human rights. Lambda Legal is committed to achieving full recognition of civil rights for LGBTQ+ people and everyone living with HIV, to ensure legal protections and to end discrimination. Donate at lambdalegal.org. That's lambdalegal.org. And Lambda Legal also provides free services from those impacted who need the support. Trans Lifeline provides trans peer support that's been divested from police since day one. They're run by and for trans people. Donate at translifeline.org. That's translifeline.org. The Audre Lorde Project is a lesbian, gay, bisexual, two-spirit, trans and gender, non-conforming, people of color community organizing center focusing on the New York City area. Donate at alp.org. That's alp.org. The U.S. has the highest rate of maternal mortality than any other developed country. Christian nationalists, backed by the oil and coal lobby, worsen this crisis with their authoritarian abortion bans. Donate to the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project that provides support to those who need an abortion or emergency contraceptives. Donate at WRRAP.org. That's WRRAP.org. To help get Ukraine urgently needed humanitarian aid, join me in donating to Razom for Ukraine at razomforukraine.org. To help civilians and refugees in conflict zones, donate to Doctors Without Borders at doctorswithoutborders.org. And if you want to help critically endangered orangutans, yes, that's how you say it, already under pressure from the palm oil industry, donate to the Orangutan Project at theorangutanproject.org. Gaslit Nation is produced by Andrea Chalupa. Our production manager is Nicholas Torres. Our associate producer is Carlin Daigle. Our episodes are edited by Nicholas Torres. And our Patreon exclusive content is edited by Taj Easton and Carlin Daigle.
And a big warm welcome to Gaslit Nation's first ever artist in residence who will be with us through the summer of 2024, getting us ready for Victory on November 5th. A big Gaslit Nation welcome to Jerica Miguel, the wonderful singer-songwriter. You can find her work at Jerica Miguel. That's JERRIKAMIGHELLE.com. Her music is incredibly haunting. You heard it on the show at the very end of May, and you'll hear it again, getting us ready for the election. If you like what we do, leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more listeners. And check out our Patreon. It keeps us going. Original music in Gaslit Nation is produced by David Whitehead, Martin Vissenberg, Nick Farr, Damian Arriaga, and Carlin Daigle. Our logo design was donated to us by Hamish Smythe of the New York-based firm Order. Thank you so much, Hamish. Gaslit Nation would like to thank our supporters at the producer level on Patreon and higher. Work for Better, Prep for Trouble, that's right, Lily Wachowski, John Schoenthaler, Ellen McGirt, Larry Gasson, D. Scott, Ann Bertino, David East, Joseph Mara Jr., Mark, Sean Berg, Kristen Custer, Kevin Gannon, Sandra Collins, Katie Masuris, James D. Leonard, Leo Chalupa, Carol Goldstad, Marcus J. Trent, Joe Darcy, Ann Marshall, D.L. Sinkfield, Nicole Spear, Abby Road, Jans Alstrup Rasmussen, Sarah Gray, Diana Gallagher, Leah Campbell, Jared Lombardo, Ann Marshall, Tanya Chalupa. Thank you all for your support of the show. We could not make Gaslit Nation without you.